Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where we're asking why Japanese BioPharma is embracing Ireland. Ireland's life science sector has a global reputation and has attracted leading industry names such as Pfizer, GlaxoSmithKline and Novartis. And recently, Japanese pharma companies have also been choosing Ireland as their European base. With my guests, I'm going to be looking at how well the sector stands up to the needs and requirements of Japanese pharma, and just what the region has to offer in the way of innovation, technical expertise and business services. Joining me, I have experts from Ireland's biopharma sector. From Takeda, we've got James Dinniss, plant head. Last year, Takeda celebrated 25 years at Bray in Ireland, and James has been with the company for nearly 20 of those years. James, welcome. Joining him is Darrin Morrissey, CEO of the National Institute for Bioprocessing Research and Training, or NIBRT. The institute is a collaboration between industry, government and academia based in Dublin. Darrin has extensive experience in pharmaceutical and biotech industries prior to joining NIBRT. And finally, from IDA Ireland, we welcome Rory Mullen, Head of BioPharma. IDA Ireland is the Irish governmental agency, and that's responsible for inward international investment into Ireland. More than 85 pharmaceutical companies have bases in Ireland, employing over 30,000 people. Rory, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks.
And Rory, we'll start with you. Tell me about some of the biopharma companies in Ireland today, and what's the scale of the industry?
Sure. The pharmaceuticals is one of the jewels in the crown of IDA's portfolio of companies. We've been very successful in attracting companies, pharmaceutical companies from the US, from Europe and from Asia. In fact, we've 9 of the top 10 biopharmaceutical companies that have significant biomanufacturing operations in Ireland, and they actually employ over 45,000 people in the country. So it's a very diverse industry. We started off 50 years ago with small molecule manufacturing, both API and oral solid dose manufacturing, and we've still about 15,000 people employed in those sectors. But what has really grown strongly over the last 10 or 15 years is the biologics sector, where we now employ over 18,000 people in biologics manufacturing, both on the drug substance and in the sterile fill of the drug product here in Ireland. And in addition to that, we have about 9,000 people employed by companies who are managing their European medical affairs, regulatory affairs, commercial operations out of Ireland, and managing the European business that way. So it really is a robust and strongly growing sector, and it really has been very successful for Ireland. It accounts for over 70% of the exports from the country are in the life sciences space.
Wow, a very strong sector indeed. And James, as I mentioned, Takeda has been in Ireland for 25 years. Have you seen many changes in the way Ireland's biopharma sector has developed in this time?
Yeah, hugely. And I think Rory sort of mentioned it there, you know, the transition from small molecule into large molecule. And now as we move into sort of cell therapies and advanced clinical, advanced medicine approaches, it's really changing all the time in terms of the technology. But I think equally it's also changing in terms of the footprint and the ecosystem we see around the pharma industry as well. And, you know, as Ireland's grown and as the industry in Ireland's grown, we've seen all the services necessary to supporting an industry like this really pop up around us, the engineering houses, the service providers, the supply chain operators, and really come in and support the industry. And I think that's a big shift that's really helping us sort of embed ourselves as a key part of our own network in Takeda.
Thank you so much, James. And over to you, Darrin. NIBRT is a global centre of excellence for training and research in biopharma, and your facilities in Dublin are planning to be expanded. Can you tell me more about the interest you are seeing in this sector?
Yeah, certainly. Well, NIBRT, the National Institute for Bioprocessing Research and Training, is HQ'd in Dublin, as you said. We were set up over 10 years ago, and with the aim of supporting the biopharma manufacturing industry to address their research and training needs. And I guess to help the IDA in attracting inward investment into Ireland. So that gives us over 10 years of experience of working very closely with biopharma clients. And I guess what we're seeing is, in terms of demand, the biggest part of our market is still traditional large molecule monoclonal antibody and recombinant protein manufacturing. I say traditional, it's about 20 years old now as a discipline, but it's an area where the market is growing and there is significant training and research needs in that area still. At NIBRT, we provide that training through an end-to-end simulated GMP, good manufacturing practice facility. And we deliver research end-to-end as well, helping to resolve the manufacturing challenges step by step. Now, more recently, however, and something that IDA and ourselves have very much focused on is the whole area of advanced therapeutics. Advanced therapeutics include therapies like cell therapy, gene therapy, novel vaccines, and the likes of mRNA therapies and vaccines that you would have heard a lot about during the COVID pandemic. And increasingly, we see activity on the research side in that area, again, to resolve some of the complex manufacturing problems that exist, like characterization of viral vectors, like delivery of the gene into the cell, gene delivery systems, and then also at the whole question of mRNA stability. And to address that need, that growing need in advanced therapeutics, IDA Ireland have recently invested 21 million euro to expand the facility that you see behind me here, to deliver new laboratories, new training facilities, and allow us to hire new talent in the area of advanced therapeutics.
That's incredible. Thank you, Darrin. And back to you, Rory. The pharma sector in Ireland has a very strong connection with the US. Do you think this has been a factor in Ireland becoming a centre of excellence in this space?
Certainly our original investors were from the US, but we actually have quite a geographically diverse industry now. We have Takeda and Astellas from Japan. WuXi have developed their first monoclonal antibody manufacturing facility in Dundalk, just north of Dublin, and they're commissioning that at the moment, and they're building out a second vaccine plant in the same location. And then from a European point of view, I mean, Novartis have one of their global shared services centres. Although they're a Swiss company, they've established their European service centre here in Ireland to service their European companies. We also have from France, we have Sanofi. From Spain, we have Grifols. From France as well, we have Servier and Ipsen. So we're an attractive location for anyone that is supplying the European market. I suppose our strongest success has been from the US, but we have a strong base of Asian and European companies as well, operating their European and sometimes their global manufacturing out of Ireland.
And James, moving across the Pacific, Japan has the world's most rigorous compliance and regulatory requirements. Did you find that your needs were met here?
Yeah, I mean, we as a manufacturing side ourselves, we started to supply for Japan back in 2012, and that was an enormous challenge because they do have a very different perception of quality and what quality means in terms of the visual quality of the tablets. So we had to work very hard to sort of, first of all, flex our workforce and educate people and bring everyone on that journey about absorbing that new quality culture that was required. And then we also looked to technology, and some of that technology we found in Europe and some of it we found in Japan, and we were able to bring it in and make sure that we could reach that quality standard that was required for Japanese supply, which was certainly very challenging and something very different to what we were used to supplying the US and Europe prior to that.
Thank you, James. And Darrin, back to you. NIBRT has been working closely with Astellas. Can you tell me more about this relationship?
We've been working since day one of our inception with Astellas. Astellas have a facility in particular located in the southwest of the country in Culloden, and we work with them. We train their staff. Very recently, we conducted a graduates training program where we took newly graduated recruits and we put them through their paces across the entirety of the manufacturing process, from upstream culture and bioreactor work right through downstream purification and into fill-finish product development. And not only do we work with Astellas, but in terms of Japanese companies, we work very closely with Takeda. Most notably, we work with Takeda on autologous cell therapy. So they have a facility on the west side of Dublin that manufactures their new autologous cell therapy product, and we work with training their staff. And more broadly, in an Asian context, we work very closely with the likes of WuXi from China on their vaccines and biologics manufacturing. We're training their staff, and we're engaged in a training partnership with the Yonsei University in Korea to train operatives in the biologics manufacturing space in Korea as well. So as Rory said earlier on, I mean, we would have started being very US centric, but increasingly we've grown and expanded that global perspective, and Asia is playing and Japan are playing a really important part of our focus now.
Over to you again, James. Ireland is the third largest exporter of pharma products. What has your experience been with supply chain infrastructure?
The Irish supply chain setup is pretty mature. And, you know, I mean, we've supplied out of this plant for 25 years all around the world, you know, literally South America, Africa, Europe, US. So very broad supply base here from the Bray site. I know in the Grange Castle site, and Darrin mentioned there, the cell therapy, there's some very specific supply chain requirements for that because it's got a very short shelf life. And I think one of the deciding factors about sourcing that from Ireland was indeed that the supply chain was suitable to get it into Europe within, I believe, 48 hours of its manufacture. So very, very complex and tight supply chains. So for us, the supply chain structures in Ireland and the support around supply chain has been very, very good, both on the outgoing, but also on some of the upstream supply chain topics for packaging materials and materials. We've found some very, very flexible suppliers in Ireland who are able to meet some quite tight timelines, especially when we're in launch time, and we're really pushing our suppliers to give us product as quickly as possible on short timelines. Those sort of upstream supply chains make a big difference as well.
And Darrin, you mentioned the pandemic earlier. Of course, during the pandemic, we saw the biopharma industry really accelerating to meet urgent global need. And one of the knock-on effects has been an increased need for talent with digital skills, and this hasn't abated. While the core competencies remain the same, do you think access to a digitally savvy workforce is now a must for employers?
Digital is important, but I wouldn't lose sight of the fact that talent in a general sense in biopharma manufacturing, in the biologic and biotechnology space, is probably the most pressing issue that manufacturing facilities have globally. Now, digital is a component of that, and increasingly digital technologies are growing in their influence within the manufacturing, the biopharma manufacturing setting. So there's an increased need for people with data analytics skills, skills in robotics and automation, and even going as far as to say future technologies like AR and VR, they're starting to arrive now, blockchain technology, digital twinning, and other things like that. Now, I would say that for many years, the biopharma industry has been a bit of a laggard in the context of technology, mainly driven by the fact that it's highly regulatory complex setting, and regulators, I suppose, struggled with the introduction of technology into processes. But increasingly, and I think possibly COVID has even been an accelerator in this regard, has seen new roles starting to be advertised. And we've seen, for example, biopharma automation engineers and roles like that require automation, digital analytic skills being advertised increasingly by the companies.
And on that note, James, what has your experience been as an employer in the pharmaceutical industry in sourcing talent in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, Ireland's always been a great pool of talent, but also a very challenging place because there's just so many pharmacos around. I think what we've seen here over the years, and it's another area that I think Ireland's really, really developed in, is the advent of things like NIBRT, but also we've seen the apprenticeship schemes come into the Irish education system. And those schemes in the recent past have really helped us get over some serious resource problems we've had in our QC labs and other parts of our operations. So I think the government and the IDA are always looking for ways to support the education of people that we need to run our operations. And you know, they really bring things to to bear that are quite effective for us to solve some of the operational challenges we might have around staffing and resourcing. In relation to digital and especially automation, that's definitely a big challenge, and it's something that I think all of us are trying to work on, both buying in the skills, but also trying to upskill our internal people and bring them on a journey. And there's another education piece in that, which is quite interesting and quite engaging for a lot of people as well, to be given that opportunity to branch out into digital space and into data and data analytics. And we're finding quite high engagement with some of our shop floor teams in getting involved in those kind of activities as we go through that journey as well.
Thanks, James. And Rory, back to you. As a destination, Ireland is competitive for corporation tax, but what other government incentives are international companies able to consider in Ireland?
Certainly, foreign direct investment is very important to Ireland's economy. It has been since we really only developed economically since the 1950s. So it is recognised by all the political parties in Ireland that foreign direct investment plays a large part in our economic development, along with our tourism industry, our agriculture industry, and our indigenous manufacturing industry and technology industry. So we also have we have a very focused government. All, as I said, all of the parties, regardless of who is in power, the infrastructure and the systems are designed to be beneficial both for overseas companies and Irish companies. And it's that mix, I think, that has allowed us to focus, along with the agility of the government. Being a small, relatively centralized country, we can react very quickly to the needs of industry to ensure that our clients have the staff they need or have the infrastructure they need to be able to develop. I think we've seen on the supply chain side, I think we've seen a lot of activity over the last number of years. Obviously, the industry has had to up its capacity hugely to deal with both the antiviral medications and the vaccines that have been required as a result of the COVID crisis. And I think all that has happened in the last couple of years has highlighted to companies the importance of having geographical resilience in their supply chain as well as everything else, because with the occasional invocation of the Defense Act in the US or with shutdowns in various countries, it's made companies realize that they do have to have that geographical resilience. And as a result, I think we've seen a lot of interest in manufacturing capacity out of Europe. We've seen a lot of companies looking to see to ensure that geographical diversity is there. So it's certainly interesting times, and we, as I said, have been competitive with both European, Asian, and US companies. So we're looking forward to see how the industry develops in the future.
And Darrin, how important is it to maintain partnerships between industry, government, and academia, not just regionally but internationally?
I think it's very important, and it's probably getting more important. I think NIBRT is a manifestation and a really strong exemplar of where government agency like IDA and the academic sector with industry came together over 10 years ago to develop something in collaboration, a really important infrastructure that helped with the global talent shortage on the training side and in terms of new technologies on the research side. And it's more of that we need. And I think during COVID, we actually saw at a global level that actually happen. We saw governments, companies, academia come together to deliver vaccine technology and the ability and the wherewithal to manufacture those vaccines as a collective effort. And I think going forward, what I would like to see is more governments prepared to invest in infrastructure for training and research that everybody can use, so that can have a global impact. To that, I think that you need to see companies then respond by leaning in and co-investing in projects. Those companies can be big biopharma companies, but they also can be and should be the smaller biotech companies who bring a lot of the technology innovation to the scene. And I think there's a big role for vendors as well. So vendors of your equipment, your software, and your technology, because I think that group effort where people take down the barricades, and I suppose, act as a team, can drive innovation way quicker, and uptake of that innovation way quicker than working on our own.
And looking at the industry as a whole, what growth opportunities are on the horizon, and how will the region stay competitive? Rory, what are your thoughts?
To be honest, when we were reviewing our strategy, we focused on the development of biologics over the last decade, but we have been surprised by the resilience of the small molecule manufacturing sector, like the plant that James is running there. Just over a year ago, AstraZeneca, the Swedish UK company, announced the development of their first API manufacturing plant in Ireland, which I think shows the resilience of that sector. But we do see in the future, and the reason we have invested through NIBRT in the development of their new ATMP, their cell and gene facilities, we do see the personalization of medicine beginning to take off. We are always going to need the effective small molecule drugs that have been developed. We're going to need the monoclonal antibody therapies that we've developed, but there are new therapies coming in, and we want to ensure that we are positioned to be able to capitalize on that growth as well. So I think that's certainly what IDA is trying to do, is to ensure that all sectors of the manufacturing, biopharmaceutical manufacturing industry remain competitive in Ireland. And I think the recent wins across Takeda Cell Therapy, Myra GTX, who developed a viral vector manufacturing facility in Shannon, AstraZeneca with their new small molecule API plant in Dublin, Eli Lilly with a new monoclonal antibody manufacturing facility in Limerick, MSD with their new biologics monoclonal antibody facility in Dunboyne. That's only over the last couple of years, the announcements that we've seen, and we are seeing that growth across all of the sectors. So I suppose the new one that we expect to develop most over the coming years is the cell and gene, which is why we're continuing to invest in that area. And I suppose to the success of NIBRT, I think, and no small thanks to Darrin, I think that has enabled us. We have now also developed an advanced manufacturing centre down in Limerick that is going to be focused on discrete manufacturing and the digitalisation of discrete manufacturing, based around the successful NIBRT model. So we are continuing to invest to ensure that the correctly trained staff are available, that the training is available both in the universities and through institutes such as NIBRT and the AMC, and that the infrastructure and that the focused business-friendly environment is there to ensure that we continue to win business across all sectors.
Thank you, Rory. And James, over to you.
Yeah, I think, I come from the older part of the pharmaceutical industry, if you like, in the small molecule space. And I think for us, it's really about finding our strategic meaning for our business and our organization. That starts with having really strong quality records. And of course, that's underpinned by the Irish ecosystem around the HPRA and the mutual recognition agreements that they have with the FDA and what have you. So it really starts with having quality at the core and the base of the business, and making sure that you don't have quality issues, and then you develop on from there and try to find your niche. And with us, that niche has come from as Takeda moves into rarer diseases and smaller volumes and more complex products in the solid oral dose space, servicing the markets and the needs that Takeda sees in the future in that space. And so I really think it's about being flexible, making sure you understand where your particular organization is going, and trying to tailor the offering that you have in Ireland and in the various factories around Ireland to what's going on. And that's probably a little bit more for some of the older factories that are working their way through transformations and seeing the large molecule piece play out as well. But we certainly see, to echo Rory's sentiment, we certainly see solid oral dose as a really strong player. Small molecule continues to be very, very important for Takeda. And recently we've had several new products come into our plant, which just reinforces that it's still a big part of our industry. But undoubtedly, the very, very exciting treatments in the advanced therapies are going to be game changers as well, and need a lot of different approaches as well.
Darrin, what are your final thoughts on that?
At the risk of repeating everything that Rory and James said, I will repeat what they said. I think advanced therapeutics, no doubt, are a big opportunity. Advanced therapeutics, as I said earlier on, is an expanse of things like cell therapies, gene therapies, oligonucleotide-based therapies, and other novel technologies. And I think they're an opportunity, but they're also a challenge because they're complex. And with complexity comes the imperative for us to do things more smartly and to engage and deliver innovation more quickly. I would also repeat what I said earlier on about digitization. I think that is a huge opportunity. The introduction of digital technology and data analytics smarts into a manufacturing process has the capacity to drive real efficiency and effectiveness of that process. And ultimately the patient benefits because you end up with more cost effective and medicines coming to market more quickly. That's an opportunity. The challenge there is, I think, engaging with the regulators. I think, as I said, regulators have taken time to adjust with the introduction of new technologies. But again, for a facility like ourselves that does training and research on those thorny biopharma challenges, I think it's a huge opportunity for us to engage in those important problems.
Thank you, Darrin Morrissey, and also to James Dinniss and Rory Mullen for exploring this topic with us and offering your personal insight on what is an expanding and vibrant sector. In our next webinar, we'll be looking at the companion to BioPharma, MedTech, and discussing, is Ireland Europe's MedTech hotspot? And we'll be drawing an appraisal of the sector from international business leaders Mark Hennessy at Bausch & Lomb and James Winters from Teleflex. If you'd like to find out more about IDA Ireland, please visit www.idaireland.com. Thank you for watching.